Intruder caught on camera, posted in the Let's Not Meet subreddit by Alex Jason. So this story takes place over one summer when I was 14 years old. It was around 11 p.m. and I was in my bedroom on my computer. I'd just gotten home. I was living with my brother at the same time because my parents were in Florida for a while, so me and my brother were the only ones home, and the only ones who had access to the house. I needed a photo of myself for something, I don't remember what, and I opened my camera roll to look through. And this is the photograph that came up. Immediately my whole body froze and I couldn't move. I immediately closed the camera roll and sat in my bed for a while. I began shaking and tears of fright came to my eyes. I gained the courage to open the camera roll to look again. I stared at the photo for at least 10 minutes, feeling more uneasy every second. I checked the time the picture was taken, and that made me more distressed. The picture was taken at 9:45 p.m. What made it worse was that me and my brother both left the house at 8 to get dinner. No one was home at the time the picture was taken. Afraid to leave my room, I picked up my phone and messaged my brother. I told him that I was so scared I couldn't move, and if he could come here. He asked what was wrong, and I sent him the picture from my computer along with what happened. Him thinking it was a joke and told me goodnight. Me not joking, I called him. He could obviously hear me crying and started questioning me. I told him to come to my room, and he did so. He entered the room with a golf club for protecting. At this point, we were both panicked, staring at the blurry picture of a man we didn't recognize. We decided to go check the house to see if anyone was home, so we proceeded to swipe through all 4 floors of our house. We didn't see anything sketchy on the top 3 floors, so we walked down to the basement. We walked down the stairs, and my brother led the way. I looked to the back corner of the basement where the cellar door that leads to the outside is. The door and the hatch that covers the steps to the outside are both wide open. After this happened, we called the police and showed them the picture and told them the story. They told us to lock our doors and call them if we heard or saw anything. We locked the doors and both sat in his room for the rest of the night. Whoever was in our house and on my computer must have opened the computer and opened the camera accidentally. He must have accidentally pressed the space bar while the camera was open in the background and snapped a picture of him. I still wonder why someone would just break into a house for nothing. Nothing was stolen. No drawers or cabinets were open. Nothing seemed out of place. My brother ended up moving out of the house a few days later in fear the guy would come back. Out of the Mist, posted in the Let's Not Meet subreddit by Paps Miguel. So let me start off by saying I move around a lot in between SoCal and Arizona. At the time of this, in December 2015, I was still living in Southern California at my grandparents' apartments. I had gotten a seasonal job at Toys R Us to do something with my time and learn some people skills. I'm a 24-year-old girl and have some pretty extreme social anxiety, and I find it really hard to talk to people. So I figured this job would help. Another important thing to mention, my grandmother is on a government program with reduced housing cost and has a 2-bedroom apartment ever since my grandfather passed. But due to the annual check at her complex, she is supposed to be the only inhabitant of her dwelling, so technically I was not supposed to be living there with her, but she liked the help and company, and I liked being rent-free. Now, since I wasn't supposed to be there, I technically had to sneak around and most definitely couldn't park on the parking grounds for the complex, as it would draw attention. There was a cemetery across the street from the complex, and then half-mile of houses leading down the street next to the cemetery, along which most of the visitors for the houses and apartments nearby, including myself, parked. I was getting free rent and staying with my grandma, which was awesome to me, even if I meant I had to usually park half a mile away from the complex. I don't mind the walk. So all was well for a few months, but then I got the job in October, minus the scary incident with the stalker at work. I'll leave that story for another time. But eventually they started putting me on night shifts, which I definitely did not mind since I tend to be a night owl. Also, if you've ever been on closing shift at any retail store, you'll know you can easily stay an hour or two overtime after the store is closing due to the holiday season. It was early December at the time, and I ended up getting off work past 2 a.m. Around this hour at this time of year, in this part of SoCal, the mist gets unbearably thick to the point of having to drive 30 miles an hour down the freeway with brights on and still being unable to see a foot or two in front of your car. Tonight was one of those nights. I wasn't too bothered by it at that time, but it does set off my anxiety a little bit, so by the time I got home it took me nearly 20 minutes to find a parking space. I was pretty anxious. Of course, with my luck, I parked at the very end of the half-mile stretch. Now, it's kind of a tradition of mine to get out of the car, close the door, and linger near my car for a minute while I audibly stretch out a bit and sometimes complain. It's just a little habit thing I do, and tonight was no different. I immediately tucked my purse under my arm, turned on my phone flashlight, and stuck it in front of my face to see where I was going. Because the fog was so thick I couldn't see a foot in front of my face. I had walked in this weather many times before, so I knew the way home. A straight shot walk for half a mile and a sharp left turn at the end of the cemetery, then crossing the street and into the gated complex, so I was on my merry way. Until I heard it. A loud, almost obnoxious cough and footsteps. My alert mode set in, and I instantly started walking faster and trying to be quieter about my movements. Call me paranoid, but I've had a fair number of let's not meet moments, and I certainly wasn't keen about meeting the stranger walking behind me, especially given the fact that I can't see a foot in front of my face, even with the streetlights and my phone flashlight. This continues for a few minutes with an occasional cough behind me. Then I hear a whistle. The kind cat callers do, which bewilders me because 1, you can't see crap, and 2, since you can't see crap in this weather, I assume this person is purposely intimidating me, which at point I give up on walking and break into a run. The steps behind me break into a full-blown run and I hear panting. Clearly, the dude isn't in the best shape. Neither am I, but the run didn't win me as bad. By now I'm speed walking next to the cemetery, and for some reason my panicked mind tells me it would be better to duck into the cemetery and hide instead of walk the straight shot home. Had there been no fog, I would have had a clear view of my grandma's apartment from the area in the cemetery where I stood. I quickly hid by crouching behind the entrance post to the cemetery gates, and I knew I messed up, because his footsteps stopped too, and I could tell he knew I was hiding because of my lack of audible footsteps. I crouched there for what seemed like 10 minutes. Too scared to turn on my phone for fear of him being close enough to see the light and find me. And too scared to make a run for it for fear that he was intently listening out for me. I had figured out he was standing probably 5 to 10 feet from where I was at the entrance driveway to the cemetery right before the gates, which confirmed when, after minutes, I heard the voice say,
"I know you're there, sweetheart."
I heard a distinct sound of a lighter being struck, and then smelled cigarette smoke. Figured the dude was focused on his cigarette. I made a run for it across the cemetery, somehow not tripping over any graves, all the while intently trying to listen behind me. The cemetery's main entrance was wrought iron fence, but back and right end is wooden and serves as a separator between the cemetery and the backyard of various houses, and the other side, which is in front of my grandmother's apartment, is a chain-link fence. There is no other entrance or exit to the cemetery, but I know the chain-link fence doesn't go all the way to the ground, so I laid on my stomach, pushed the fence out and up, and wriggled across and ran directly across the street to my grandma's house, pounding on her door until she opened. I don't know how this dude found me. He must have been standing around nearby as I parked and heard me complain to myself loudly when I got out of the car, but either way, that was one of the most terrifying experiences I've ever had. So creepy stalker guy in South San Diego who likes to come out of the mist and terrify women at 3 a.m. Let's never meet again. He fired 2 shots at me. Posted in the Let's Not Meet subreddit by Jadish. The story takes place in the beginning of the year, my first year as a freshman in high school. First, a little backstory. Flashback to the 8th grade, and one of my best friends at the time, Jasmine, was known to date around. It was non-stop. Think of a revolving door. Anyway, we went to school with this weird, to say the least, kid named Jordan. Jordan was always belting random things out in class to no response, talking loudly, etc. Think awkward silence. Nobody really talked to him. Kids are mean, especially teenagers. Now, I've always been one to be nice to kids that are outcasts because it's hard enough being a teenager with friends. So it just happens that Jasmine, and I'm quoting her on this one, had pity dated him in the past. He weirded her out too. There were times when I would be hanging out with Jasmine and he would message me asking if she was okay and to tell her that he said hi. I tried not to engage too much. I specifically remember one night I checked my phone and saw that I had a missed call from Jordan on Facebook Messenger. Curious, I messaged him. You called? I just wanted to see if you'd answer. Slightly weirded out, I remember talking about it with my twin brother, who the next day told Jordan to stay away from my sister, which he did because I can hardly remember anything else happening after that. Until this year. At the beginning of this semester, we had 2 classes together, newspaper and PE, periods 1 and 2. I would usually walk out of my newspaper class after everyone else, taking my time with putting everything in my backpack. So did Jordan. He would usually follow me as we had next class together, which he would then try to talk to me or say anything. It always made me feel uncomfortable. I just had a weird gut feeling in my stomach, so I kept my replies short and gave off many body language signals that I was not interested in conversing. A few weeks later, I noticed that a friend of mine would talk to Jordan during PE. Later, realizing I had math with him, I brought Jordan up. He started laughing. That kid has issues. What do you mean? I asked. Still amused, he said, he talks about shooting up the school and being a devil worshiper or some crap, I don't even know. Completely not amused, I made sure to steer completely clear of him as much as possible. Soon, more weird comments about guns and weapons were made. One day it was overhearing him talk about shooting himself. The next it was him commenting to me that he wished he had a shotgun so he could shoot out the window and just walk out. One morning I got out of newspaper class, mixing with the sea of kids scattered throughout the hallways in waves, until I felt 2 firm taps on my shoulder. I turned around. It was Jordan, pointing his hand at me in the form of a gun. As soon as I turned around, he fired 2 shots at me with his hand and blended into the crowd. I stopped walking, grabbed my phone out of my bag, and called my mom, who immediately reported it to the school. They told my mom they would take care of it, which they did because after PE, my friend told me that he'd been taken out of class. I never saw him again. No one has this last semester. I hope he got the help he needs, but I wonder why it was me he paid attention to. I was nice to him. Would he have tried to actually hurt me or gone through with the school shooting? I'd rather not know. So Jordan, let's not meet.